you go. Michael, man, we are excited to have you back once again, right? We had you on before, had a great response. And so I know that you've progressed a ton in your business from where you were previously. And so we want to talk about that, man. But before we jump into it,
we're having a little issue. You did progress a ton, Mike.
That echo will get you. It is streaming though.
We're good.
Perfect. Yeah. So we want, right? Just a little hiccup before we get into your story, Michael, right? Is, hey man, tell our listeners here, give them a little backstory about how you got started. I've heard it before, but I want to hear it again. Great little story on kind of stepping out of your comfort zone.
Cool, man. Well, what an honor it is to be back here again a second time. So thank you guys. Appreciate that. But yeah, for people who don't know me, my name is Michael McDonald, born and raised in Nebraska, and was always told to go to school, get that good job. And so that's what I did. I went to college in Lincoln for my associate's degree in nutrition and found out that nutrition wasn't paying the bills, wasn't paying for the lifestyle that my family and I wanted. And so long story short, my wife and I, we were looking for more, and we didn't know what that was going to be. And finally, one of my friends pulled me in and he said, man, come to this real estate event. They'll teach you how to make money with little to no money down. It's free. I'm like, cool. What do I have to lose? So went to it. It was one of those hotel deals that come through town, and showed up, and they sold me on the dream. They said, hey, if you want to be in real estate, this is what you need to do. And I'm like, cool, sign me up. A couple $1,000, no big deal. Didn't have it, but we put it on credit. I'm like, oh, we'll pay it back. And went to the event. And at that event, they said, you need a mentor and you need more help. And I said, you're right, I do. And so at that time, I called my wife and I said, babe, I have a big ask here. They want me to pay them $20,000 to learn real estate. And my wife cheered me on. She says, you know what, if you believe that this is what you're going to do, go for it. I mean, what's the cost of $20,000 when college is $20,000 to $50,000 or whatever it was at that time?
She's smart.
So we did it. I looked at it as an investment in my future of real estate investing, right? And so helped me raise the credit. Didn't have it. In fact, just closed on a house and had a few cents in our name when we did that. And the funnest part about this whole story, and I think you guys probably know what I'm going to get to here, is I get home from the event. My wife pulls me aside. She says, babe, come with me. I got to show you something. I'm like, okay, what's going on? She takes me downstairs, and all of a sudden she pulls out the pregnancy test. And, as if the house, the student loan debt from college, and this $20-some thousand in credit wasn't enough. Now I'm going to be a dad. And so that is my start into real estate. And what's happened since then, guys, is I was in Lincoln, started wholesaling real estate part-time. And what that led to is I made more money part-time than I made at my full-time career. And that was an aha moment for me. And so at that point in time, my wife said, hey, you got to quit your job. I'm like, what do you mean quit my job? That's the secure, stable thing. That's how we're paying our bills. But it wasn't enough. And yeah, we put all of our chips on the table, literally moved to Vegas right after I quit my job. We went all in and haven't looked back ever since.
Now, Michael, I know I've heard this story before, but it's just so impactful. I'm just trying to imagine, all right, hey, school's not for me, so I'm going to get a job. You're young, you got married, you just got this debt, for this education, and then you're having a baby. Like,
yeah,
I can't imagine what was going through your mind. And my first reaction would be is like, all right, man, I'm out. Forget this real estate, how did you get over that? How did you get over that mindset or that garbage or that doubt?
Yeah. So that's the piece that I think a lot of people watching this need to understand. There was a point in my life at that point where I would say most people would consider it rock bottom. But for me, it was just the start of something amazing. And I was so excited for it. I knew that I could do it, but I couldn't have done it had I not gotten my mind right. So at my mind right at that time is when I started picking up books. I picked up a book. One of the books that changed many people's lives, I think, in real estate was Rich Dad Poor Dad. I picked up a book called Miracle Morning. And I just followed the instruction. I just started doing what they said they were going to do. And I think, guys, I was running on a little bit of every emotion you could think of. I was running on fear. I was running on anxiety. I was running on, if I don't do this, then my family's going to suffer. And like, I just couldn't let that happen. So I would work all day long, and I would get off work and I would come home and I would have dinner, and then I would go start cold calling. And it was very, very difficult for 6 to 8 months. And actually for the first year and a half, until probably the last day that last credit card was paid off, right before it hit 15 to 25% interest on that 0% promotional offer, because I was making just the bare minimum payment on $45,000 worth of debt. And so to answer your question, mindset and the vision of what I wanted out of this whole dream kept pushing me when things were getting very difficult. And my wife, the day I quit my job, or the leading up to quitting my job, she says, we have to sell the house. And 2 years prior, that was like a huge accomplishment for us. And I was like, well, what do you mean sell the house? She's like, look at you. Your eyes are bloodshot. We have a baby that's going to be born soon. We can't even spend time with you. You've got to do something different. And this half in and half out stuff is not cutting it. So we had to make a drastic change to get that full-time business up and running to the point where it was going to replace our income and then ultimately make more than just what we needed to pay the bills.
Yeah, it sounds like you got a good woman right there.
I was just going to say, man, it's you were looking for a mentor at one point, but man, a support system right there is what Regina was, man. She was phenomenal in pointing some of these things out. And I think you said you read the books and just followed directions. It sounds like you were following a lot of her directions. She's saying, listen, we're selling the house. You got to go full time. And man, how important is that kind of relationship there?
It's everything, because as you guys know, with a business, it's there's naysayers, and sometimes family can be naysayers, sometimes friends can be naysayers. The people I was working with were naysayers, and calling it a pipe dream, and real estate's risky, and all of these things, all of this stuff coming in this year, all this noise, and then me knowing what I had to lose, it just pushed me so much more. And I thank those people, because yeah, without that and without Regina pushing me, I don't know where it would be without that.
Awesome, man. Well, tell us how you kind of built your team, right? Were you going at this alone? What I heard you say so far was that, you got into it, you're able to dig out of $45,000 of debt. What did the team look like at that point? Would you go full time and find a partner? What is that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So initially it was me. It was me pounding the pavement. I was knocking doors. I was cold calling everything for the first 12 months. The first 12 months were really just figuring out, does this work? Can I make this work? Because if I can't do it, how can I train a team on how to do it, right?
Yeah.
So I did the cold calling. I did the in-person appointments. I did the offers. I did everything, the marketing, the sales, the whole 9 yards, the transaction coordination. And then shortly after that, I met a business partner who wanted to do the same thing. He wanted to quit his job. He was a full-time appraiser for, however many years. And at that time is when my wife said, hey, let's quit the job. So we joined forces. And our vision together was a lot bigger than just flipping a couple houses a year. We were both pretty big thinkers. And so it made a great partnership. And his background was flipping, and my background was marketing and sales, and not from the nutrition, but it was just what I self-taught myself. And so I started handling this portion of it, finding the deals, and then he started handling the flipping of the deals. And then we just build our team out from there. The first year together, so about 18 months into real estate altogether, it was just me and him. we were hustling, we were making things happen, and then we got overwhelmed. And we got to the point where all of a sudden we have 12 flips going at once and a whole lot of flying pieces. And we're like, okay, we got to have a team. So our first hire was kind of like an office manager position, somebody who could help us with some transaction coordination, some lead management. And then from there, we've just kind of, departmentalized the whole business. So now we have an acquisitions team. So we have 3 acquisitions, all in states, and then we have 2 virtual VAs. They're kind of on the lead generation, acquisition side. And then on the flip side, we have a disposition team. So properties that we don't flip, we're actually selling to other investors and doing that. And outside of that, man, like that's our team. We have an IT person, we have a website person, we have 8 full-time employees. That's what our team looks like now.
Awesome, man. Mike, let's dive into some of the wholesaling, right? You've mentioned that before. If you could explain what wholesaling is to Anthony, and then maybe give an example of how your business models revolved around that.
Yeah. So, simply wholesaling is it's finding off-market properties at a discount. Typically, they're off-market, so we're going direct to seller. We're negotiating a price with that seller, and we are then contracting the property and then assigning that contract to somebody else who wants to buy the property for a higher price. So we may have a property that we've contracted for $100,000. We're assigning it to somebody else who wants to buy that property as an investment for themselves for 110, we'll say, or 120 or 150 or whatever somebody's willing to pay.
Now,
Signing contracts.
My first question is, why would that person sell it to you and not sell it to that investor directly or use a realtor?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I ask myself that question all the time. And in fact, I asked the sellers who are buying these houses from too. And many times it's because the other investor who bought it from us doesn't spend the time to find these deals. They would rather have somebody like us who've created a marketing machine, go out, spend the money, find the opportunities, negotiate them, and then just tee it up for them on a silver platter. So it's a service that we're providing not only for the buyer, the investor, but also for the seller. Because the question that we ask these sellers all the time is, hey, Mr. Seller, Mrs. Seller, why wouldn't you just list the property? Have you thought about that? Have you thought about keeping it as a rental property? And they'll tell you every reason why they don't want to do that. And they know that they'll be able to get more if they listed the property, and they may sell it to the investor that bought it from us, but they don't want to deal with it. They just want to know that the house is sold. They just want to know that they're not going to have to pay for closing costs. There's not going to be a whole bunch of back and forth. Once we've negotiated a price, we're looking to closing, they can pack up their stuff and now they're on their way.
So it's more of a convenience for the seller.
100%. Yeah.
Okay.
It's all about the convenience for sure.
Do you need a realtor's license to do that, or a real estate agent's license to do that?
So that's a very good question, because things are changing. Historically, it was pretty much the wild, wild west. However, states are actually requiring people who are signing contracts to have the real estate license now. In fact, I think there's 3 to 4 that I know of, Nebraska actually being one of those, which is our main market. And so there's obviously ways around that's like, well, just get your real estate license, right? But there's definitely cracking down coming, and legislation's really starting to hate on the so-called wholesalers, because there's a lot of, there's just like anything, right? There's always a bad apple in the bunch. There's always somebody who takes advantage of someone, or always somebody who messes it up for everyone else, which is why legislation has to step in.
Well, and I know I've talked to some realtors. They're typically not a fan of wholesalers, but why I think is they're kind of cutting out the realtor. Am I right?
Yeah, basically, because that realtor, and we've done plenty of business with real estate agents, but they always ask me the same question that you did. It's like, why did this seller sell it to you guys for this price? They could have sold it for so much more on the retail market. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know. Scratch my head every time. But hey, we've been doing this for 4 years, so there must be a need for it. There must be a service for it. And so the bottom line is, these people know that they're selling under value 9 times out of 10. And the one time that they don't is the time that we don't buy their house because they're not in a position to make that decision. We've totally passed on people who have been delirious or just not capable of making decisions because we got to sleep at night. And that's where people can feel like a wholesaler may be taking advantage of a seller.
So what I'm hearing is you, and I'm sure it's not easy, but you find a seller, you negotiate the price. So right now you have zero capital in on the deal. Outside of, I'm sure it's not easy to find that person and to learn about it. But then what if you can't find a seller to buy it within a period of time?
Yeah, so I want to talk real quick about the first thing you said. You can get started in this business with zero to no money. If you're willing to make the calls, if you're willing to go guerrilla market, if you're willing to go out there and pound the pavement. However, every person that I know who's doing business on a bigger scale invests way more into marketing than anybody out there thinks. And I'm talking about $40,000-$50,000 a month just to get our message out there. So for example, we run television commercials. TV is not cheap, right? And so maybe somebody is watching this thinking, oh, this sounds awesome. You guys are just making a fortune. It's like, well, don't forget what we did to get that deal. Don't forget how much exposure we had to have to get this many opportunities in the door. So I wanted to talk about that, number one, but it is easy to get in if you're willing to put in the work.
Okay.
Second part of that question, Anthony, remind me, sorry, I forgot. What was the second part of that question?
You can get in, or what happens? So you if you can't, I'm assuming when you negotiate the purchase that there's a closing period, right? And what happens if you can't find a seller during that period?
Yeah, that's a great question. So you do give yourself an inspection period. And the key is transparency, just like with anyone. We're setting the stage and there's an inspection period. Even though, yes, it's a cash as is purchase, we still have this inspection period. So where if for some reason I wasn't in a position to close on this property myself, which, in the beginning I was not in a position. So I just made sure to negotiate really good deals. But there are times where if you can't find a buyer and if you aren't in a position to close on it, now that's when wholesaling gets very red tape and can be very frowned upon because you had no intention to buy the property. Wholesaling is just an exit strategy. So for us, we contract a lot of properties. Our whole intent is to purchase the property. We have resources lined up to be able to close on it if for some reason our buyers just passed on it. And you do have an out. There are outs. You can put outs in your contract to within your inspection period say, hey, didn't get approved for whatever, underwriters, like there's excuses for everything.
Okay.
That's not, you don't want to do that. You don't build a brand by backing out of contracts. And so it's important that you perform, but yeah, it happens. I mean, it definitely happens where you just have to say, hey, sorry, like 12 days has went by and we found something XYZ, maybe the basement wall is falling in because we bought this house virtually based on their information. And then once we got our investors through the property, we found something major and it affected the price and they weren't willing to renegotiate.
So going back to the example that you used before, that you negotiated a price for 100,000 and you could sell for 110. How do you find that seller? Are you putting it on the MLS or how are you marketing it?
Yeah, so that's a good question. We don't put our houses on the MLS. We have what we would consider cash buyers, right? People who've opted in who said, hey, I want to buy investment properties. I want to buy fixer-uppers, what have you. And we send them a message. Anytime we have a property that comes available, if we're not going to buy it and hold it or keep it, yeah, we have a disposition person who sends out an email, a text, and they go ahead and inquire. So we have a website, they inquire about these properties, and you can't, nobody from the public can really hear about them unless they opt into this, right? And so these people raise their hand, they say, I want the house. And we're like, slow down. You know, you can't just, you don't just get the house for what you ask for. A lot of these properties go for over our ask price because remember, we're buying them at a wholesale price. So these properties have little to no competition and they're not exposed to the multiple listing service. So maybe versus 500 eyeballs, maybe versus maybe 5,000 eyeballs, maybe there's only 500 eyeballs on these properties.
Okay.
Michael, what I'm hearing you say, right, is wholesaling, right, is out there going and finding these properties. And then once you acquire it, you've got some opportunities to either you take it personally, right, and you guys do something with it, or you're kind of assigning it to a fix and flipper. How has your business evolved? Did you start fix and flipping it, or did you guys just get into that kind of as of recently? And then what's the next step? Is there a progression from there?
Yeah, so I think a lot of people, it takes a lot of stamina. It takes a lot of stamina to consistently wholesale and make that your main primary business because you're spending money to make money. You're basically working a full-time job if you're doing it yourself. Now, the progression has been we want to build this thing out to where we have all the team members who are in the right seats and they're out there making things happen and it becomes a cash flow business, right? So for us, we want to be able to, number one, provide for our family, but number two, use the cash flows from that business to buy assets, to be able to buy and hold more properties to build that long-term wealth. But the progression is really, if you can get good at finding the properties, now you can have the juice that the person who paid you that $20,000 fee to buy that property from you had, and you can flip and you can make just that much more. So the progression is flipping, and then I think long-term building wealth and holding property.
Now, are there certain markets that are better for this, right? We're in Las Vegas. You said you started in Nebraska. How has your experience been maybe trying to expand to different markets? Is that something you guys are looking at?
Yeah, very much so. And what I'll say is we've been, I would say, comfortable in our back, what used to be my backyard. Now that I live in Vegas, it's not, but we've built a brand. We've built a brand, so the leads are flowing, and it's been a lot easier because we have more options. If we wanted to, we could definitely set up a team in any other market and start flipping and start capitalizing on that. What we like about having like our home front, so you might say, is having that opportunity too. If somebody doesn't want to pay you what you want, you can take it down yourself and flip it and not have anxiety about, oh, I got to line all these people up. And you asked about the next step, the vision, in competitiveness. In a market where there's hedge funds like Vegas, it is a little bit more competitive naturally, but the opportunity is there for the taking. If we took what we're doing over here and plugged it in over here, and we hired more staff and grew, which is the goal, we can definitely do that. I believe there becomes a point though of diminishing returns on your marketing. If you're spending marketing over here where there's Zillow or OfferPad or these big companies who have pretty much unlimited budgets, or if I could spend my marketing dollars over here where there's no hedge funds, and now I'm the so-called hedge fund, I'm going to have a lot more exposure and my marketing dollars are going to go a lot further than if I'm over here doing it. So we haven't 100% tried a big market like Las Vegas, but we've done deals in Florida, we've done deals in Colorado, we've done deals in Iowa, South Dakota. We have a deal going in Pennsylvania right now. So what happens is we cast a wide enough net that people from all over the country see us. So for example, I was running an ad in Las Vegas and a guy who lives in Henderson, who owns a property in Pennsylvania, saw my ad, called us. My acquisitions guy negotiated a deal with him, and we assigned the property in Pennsylvania. And we'll make a decent profit on that.
What I think is cool about that, again, I'm looking, we're often talking about passive income, right? And what you've done so far has been very active, right? Because you are building up the business and the brand, but like a deal like that is showing an example where your work is paying off, where you've created the systems, hired the team, and now you have them following and closing the deal, as opposed at the beginning when it was all you.
Yeah, that's how we wanted to build it out from the beginning, because I've always known that real estate wealth isn't going to be built from just flipping property. And so right now we're in this transition phase where we have started cherry picking, I would say, the best deals, and where we can buy them basically for cash, and then we can get all up and fix them and rent them, and then get all of our cash back out after we refinance. A term called BRRRR, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard of. But yeah, with that, it gives you options. Now you can start taking, one out of the 4 or 5 that you might flip or wholesale, and you put it into your rental portfolio, and you keep doing that over and over again over time. And yeah, over the next 5 or 10 years, we're going to have a pretty cool portfolio. And for us, it gets to the point where it's like, okay, like I kind of want to just like let you guys do your thing, team, and support you and give you all the resources. But now that we've done this, now that we've proven we can do this, let's go find something more exciting. Let's go, like the shiny object syndrome, right? I want to go find something bigger and better, without losing complete sight of what's worked to this point. Keep that going, make sure the operation's good, but I want to get into multifamily. So I want to start doing bigger deals. And we've done a few small apartment complexes, one of which we've kept, and 12 units, nothing crazy. But the cash flow on that and the equity is a lot more exciting than a $100,000 house. And so that's what excites me. And that's where I want to get to. We have some pretty massive goals over the next 10 years to acquire a lot of units, and we can't do it by ourselves. And so that's where we start to look for partners and different things like that.
Like what I'm hearing is Anthony and I often talk a lot about kind of our tiers, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Tier 2 for us is like you're looking at kind of developing a skill set, right? And what I'm hearing, I love the story that you shared with us, is right. We've just kind of heard you kind of build your skill set over this years, and now you're at a point where multifamily is what's exciting.
Yeah.
What would you attribute that growth to, or what is kind of some of the best personal development stuff that you've done, since you've been in business that has gotten you to where you are now?
Just always being curious, right? Being a lifelong learner and never thinking that you know it all, because I think people get to a point where like, oh, I got this figured out. I'm too cool for school. I'm just going to keep doing my thing. And then the growth stops. And so for me, what's been important is, number one, is just to talk to, like-minded people through things like this. And then also putting myself in the room. And typically those rooms are not free. And so, for example, I'm wearing a shirt. I'm a part of a group called Avengers, and it's like $35,000.
Like the Avengers?
It's Avengers, okay. Avengers Real Estate Mastermind. But yeah, just like masterminds.
Wait, no, Michael, like Anthony rudely interrupted you there as you were saying the price tag for being in that room. And I think that's important, right? Could you touch on that or just restate that for us?
Yeah. So Anthony, Avengers Real Estate Mastermind. The price tag is big. It's kind of like the country club, right? You can go golf the public course, or you can go to the country club, and you can be around people who are thinking a lot bigger. And there's nothing wrong with going out and shooting a shot at the public course. I did that the other day. But $35,000, that's going to already pre-qualify who you're going to be talking to in that room, right? And so that's what I like the most about masterminds is newbies, they got to start somewhere, but they're not going to probably sneak into that room unless they can really talk somebody into lending them 35K, because that is a ticket, right? To get into that conversation. And the conversations in that room versus the room at the free event are a whole lot different. I can promise you that.
That's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, and in fact, I met a guy who introduced me to you guys, which was amazing. The whole infinite banking thing altogether, because I put myself in one of those rooms. My buddy Gary introduced us.
GC3.
GC3, shout out.
Awesome, man. Well, Michael, can anybody do this? Can anybody kind of do what you've done?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a trailer court, guys. The guy you're looking at here is not, I'm not the smartest person in the room. I'm not, a graduate of one of these fancy colleges or anything like that. I think we already decided who the smartest person in this room is, right? But no,
whatever you say. I mean, whatever.
No, all jokes aside, like, anybody can do this. If you want more in your life, and if you want to find a vehicle that is absolutely life-changing, like what the most successful people are doing, maybe aside from infinite banking, shameless plug for you guys, but no, in all seriousness, real estate is an amazing path that you can truly get started for little to no risk, especially with wholesaling, because you're not actually buying the property, and you don't have to. You just have to be able to connect the dots. You have to be able to make those relationships, and it's a relationship business.
It does seem like a lot of people start with wholesaling and eventually move their way up, just like GC3 is doing multifamily. And it's kind of, it seems like it's no. So why do people start with wholesaling?
I think a big thing that I hear a lot is capital.
Yeah.
I think there's a bit of a misconception that you have to have a lot of money to get into real estate, number one, but to even flip houses or to even buy and hold real estate, which we all know it helps, but it's not necessarily entirely true if you can be resourceful and have those connections of money and just those introductions. But it's because it's the lowest barrier of entry. It's for sure the lowest barrier of entry.
What are some ways people can learn about how to wholesale? You went and got a course, paid $20,000. What are some avenues now?
Yeah, so I mean, the information's out there. YouTube. So there's a couple ways you can go about it, right? There's YouTube University. There's podcasts. There's the Virtual Millionaire Show. I talk about wholesaling real estate on my podcast all the time. Other great podcasts out there, Bigger Pockets is a big one. And then of course, for me, like I said, you can do it for free or you can pay. I'm big on paying for speed. And so, I've created a course. It's a video series where it basically walks you through A to Z on how to get started and scale, not just like a side hustle. You can do it for a side hustle, but what we've created is a business where there's real people, there's real money being made here. And yeah, I show people how to do it in my course. And so, I'd love to help anyone watching this who wants to learn how to just get started and do that.
How can they find your course?
So you can go to www.michaelmcdonaldrei.com.
Okay.
You can check me out there, see a little bit more about me. And then also, follow my podcast at the Michael McDonald on YouTube. And yeah, we interview experts who, we deep dive this and get into that.
Awesome.
Mike, what can they find if they go to the course? Is it a video series? Do they have access to you? Are there different levels? What's available to somebody?
No, that's a great question. So yeah, there's different levels. So there's the do it yourself, which is the video course. And in the video course, we cover a lot of the same things that you're going to get as if we go into more of an intimate setting. But we're talking about the structure. We're talking about the foundation. So we're going over teams. Who do you need in your real estate team? We're going into systems and processes, which I think is probably the most important thing. And my favorite actually is the sales aspect. So how do we have conversations with these sellers, and how do we get them to say yes? Because it's one thing to go, make all the calls and go do all this stuff to generate these leads. It's a whole nother thing to be able to close these deals and get the property from contract to close to money in your bank account. And so we go through the transaction coordination A through Z all the way through that, and that's in the course. A step further is a group coaching. In that, we do weekly Zoom calls, and then you can bring your questions, and we think of it as like a mini mastermind. So you get access to all the others who are in there, and it's very intimate. I don't really have this open to everyone, and so we're going to keep it pretty small and intimate. Mm-hmm. But if that's something you're interested in, you can definitely inquire. We can talk to more about that. And then the thing that if you really want to deep dive this and go all in, we have a one-on-one. So it's like the VIP service. So rather than you do it yourself and we show you how to, it's let me step in and actually put all these systems and processes together, and I'll implement that for you. And so that's the one-on-one as well.
Awesome. So what I'm hearing is, right, if somebody's interested, man, make sure they tune in, subscribe to the Virtual Millionaire Show. We'll make sure that we've got that link in our show notes, but man, reach out for some coaching. What an opportunity.
Michael, what I want to say, what I imagine some people might be saying, man, that VIP, it sounds great to have done help for you, but I'm sure it's going to be a higher ticket. But one thing you'd mentioned is speed, right? Is time. We have to realize, like, we're kind of thinking about it. One of our businesses buying ATM machines. We bought the ATM machines, but we don't have them placed yet. And now I'm thinking, we are losing money every month. So if there was a way for us to get those into a place sooner, we're having an issue with the bank account. We're explaining all that stuff at another moment. But
yeah,
those delays are costing us money. And so I think one thing we have to realize when you're planning out whatever this business you're going to do is just take into account time, like your time you're going to invest it in, but also the speed for you can start clicking and start getting those sales, that there's going to be some value if you're able to close a sale, say in 1 month, as opposed to doing it yourself and taking 6 months. And
so good, man. So good.
Thank you, Michael. And Michael, I got a hard question here for you. With the real estate market right now, it's going up. I mean, it's just going up. It's been on fire these last couple of years. So I would think that would make up if you find a deal that maybe isn't as good, but the market went up anyways. So I think that's helping people with wholesaling. And my concern would be is, what happens when the market gets a little more stagnant, or maybe even going down? What are some things a wholesaler can do to protect themselves?
Man, I love this question, and I don't have a silver ball, but I will tell you, I was tuned in to a guy who's done over 4,000 plus deals webinar yesterday.
Dang.
And he actually personally coached Tony Robbins to do real estate. So I pay attention and I listen to people who are like that. And also my business partner, he's been through a crash. He's been through the 2008 crash. And so where I'm kind of younger and really driven and want to take over the world and buy all these properties and do all these things, I have advisors over here who are telling me, maybe pump the brakes a little bit, kind of see what's going on. The gas prices going up and all these other factors. And you asked specifically about how does that affect wholesaling? And in my mind, as an investor, it makes the opportunities endless. The amount of, I've already felt a little bit of uptick in lead flow. I've seen foreclosures starting to open up. We've had a lot more people who need out. It's not that they want to sell. It's like they need to sell because the clock has stopped. The extensions have stopped. And what's important during that time is when buyers are maybe sitting back and waiting a little bit. You can't just like throw a property out there at some inflated price and just get your asking price. So number one, you got to buy deeper. You have to buy a bigger discount, and you have to build really, really good relationships with your investors. And that's one thing that I'm starting to focus a lot more on now, is because, yeah, we got pretty spoiled. Like we could basically just throw it out and sell it. There's actually going to be a bit of a salesmanship on the back end of wholesaling. You're going to have to build that relationship and sell the deal, versus where the challenge before was on the front end. The front end is going to get easier when this market shifts, which I think we all know may eventually happen. So some of those things are things that I think people need to look out for on wholesaling.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael.
Great insight. Michael, where can they find you? One more time.
Yeah, so www.michaelmcdonaldrei.com. You can check me out there and learn more about what I'm doing.
Awesome, Michael. Thanks again, man. We'll make sure that we got that in the show notes, and appreciate you as always.
Awesome, guys.
Go make it a fantastic day.
Take care.
Thank you.
All right. Well done, Michael. Thanks.
Yeah, great questions, guys.